Tameshi Reality Architect is a Azorius blue-white commander that can draw a card once per turn whenever you return a non-creature permanent back to owner's hand, but also comes with an activated ability that requires you to return a land to owner's hand, which will give you that card draw from the ability above, but then reanimate an artifact or enchantment card with value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And she creates a very interesting combo with a cool card called Copy Artifact. You see, Copy Artifact can come into play as any artifact in play, even a land artifact. So let's say that we have Lion's Eye Diamond in the graveyard. Cast Copy Artifact, make it enter as an artifact land, then use Tameshi's Reality Architect's ability, pay only 1 white mana, return the Copy Artifact land back to your hand, and then reanimate the Lion's Eye Diamond. Then recast Copy Artifact entering as a land again, sacrifice Lion's Eye Diamond for 3 white mana, and here you have a loop. You're netting +1 mana in each iteration of this. Copy Artifacts costs 2 mana, while Lion's Eye Diamond generates 3 mana. From this point you can win with a lot of different cards, for example Walking Ballista that will deal infinite damage from the infinite mana. But you can also use the Displacer Kitten to reset your commander. Whenever you cast Copy Artifact, Displacer Kitten will trigger, flicker your commander, and your commander will be able to do the trigger ability again. Now some might say that this is a very clanky combo because it requires a lot of different cards. You need 3 cards so far: Copy Artifact, an artifact land, and Lion's Eye Diamond. But it's not that hard as you might think, as you have alternatives. You have several different artifact lands, and any artifact land will basically do the job. You also have Lotus Bloom as an alternative to Lion's Eye Diamond. And we should also mention that this is a very resilient combo, because the commander can reanimate Copy Artifact if it gets counterspelled, and you can basically do the entire trick once again. In fact, what you're gaining from this commander is a card draw effect, together with the ability to rebuild your Plan A combo. Another important thing to mention is that all of these cards are actually great on their own. Lion's Diamond is a good card, Copy Artifact is a good card, and then we're using lands for the combo. We're playing lands anyways. But it could be good to actually include maybe a little bit more. An obvious inclusion option is Hullbreaker Horror. We're already going to be playing a lot of 0 costing artifacts, which means that we're going to easily make Hullbreaker Horror into a 1-card combo. As we're playing all artifact lands we can get our hands on already, Mox Opal will automatically become activated. And if you have Mox Opal in your deck, then Hullbreaker Horror combo potential will increase. Still on the topic of Mox Opal, this opens up great potential synergies with Displacer Kitten and Teferi Time Reveler. As the commander has a free CMC mana cost, Mox Amber is already quite good inside the decklist. This means that we're both including Mox Opal and Mox Amber, and that will just make the Displacer Kitten and Teferi Time Reveler combo more potent. But some of you might be screaming at this moment that I'm missing a very key combo. Why am I talking about these things? Because with Tameshi, you have a much more clean combo strategy with Mystical Sanctuary and Temporal Manipulation. Here we can go infinite turns. This is much more clean, right? There is a small problem or something to take notice of if you're playing this. Temporal Manipulation has a 5 mana cost to it. 5 mana is quite expensive if you also want to be able to use counter spells to protect the spell to make sure it resolves. If we compare Temporal Manipulation to Hullbreaker Horror has flash and can't be counterspelled. This means that you can cast it in your last opponent's end step, and it can't be counterspelled. You go to your turn and you untap everything. Some extra turn spells also has target player takes an extra turn, which means that the very popular card Deflecting Swat can ruin everything for you. But on the other hand, I would like to mention this. Mystic Sanctuary is just a land, so you're probably playing it anyways. Mystic Sanctuary is also quite a good card, by the way, as well. And Temporal Manipulation isn't that terrible either, but just keep in mind that it might be tricky to make sure it resolves in a mid-game area where a lot of your opponents could be sitting with counterspells in your hand. So I'm not against you having it inside your build, but just don't considering it maybe your plan A first thing that you wanna do. So we've talked about how this commander is winning the game. Let's talk about how the commander is going to play the game. Here you do actually have a lot of different potential options. You could be playing some form of stacks build, because you're quite good at reanimating your stacks cards. But you could also be playing some form of bounce commander, where you're trying to sit and interact with your opponents by casting bounce spells on their permanents, giving you triggers on your commander to basically draw cards. This would convert you into a cantrip commander. The game plan in that case would be get Tameshi Reality Architect into play as fast as you can, and then sit there and bounce a permanent on each turn cycle to basically draw a card each time, because this ability triggers only once each turn. But in a turn cycle, this means that it can trigger 4 times. Just remember that bouncing creatures won't have any effect whatsoever, but bouncing someone's arcane signet will give you a card draw, and will make your opponents quite annoyed at you. But be careful with this strategy, because bouncing someone's arcane signet could make you tap out, being unable to actually cast your counterspells when someone is casting a more scary threat. Because of this, if you wanna go this pathway, or well, regardless anyways, free to cast counterspells might be an auto-include for you. Mindbreak Trap, Force of Will, Fierce Guardianship. I mean, we're gonna have our commander in play quite fast, that's kind of key. Force of Negation, Pact of Negation. But one game plan I would like to warn you of going into is trying to activate Tameshi every single turn. I do understand the appeal of reanimating an artifact or enchantment, sacrificing the artifact or enchantment, and draw a card. But the big problem is that you are bouncing a land, and if you're doing this every single turn cycle, you aren't really developing your mana base. And that could potentially hinder you from further developing. But there is an artifact that would let you solve this problem. Surveyor's Scope. It's a 2 CMC artifact. Exile it, search your library for up to X basic lands cards, where X is the number of players who control at least 2 more lands than you. Put those cards onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. If you're returning a lot of your lands, and you basically have less lands than your opponent, you can use this to basically ritual. In the end, you're paying 2 mana to gain 3 mana. I would like to highlight that these 3 basic lands come into play untapped. In the end, this is actually a ritual. The last thing I want to highlight is that even though we have a card draw on the commander, we're still going to include a lot of card draw value engines inside the decklist. Obviously, we're playing Mystic Remora and Rhystic Study, as well as the One Ring and Trouble in Pairs. But one enchantment that is very good specifically for this commander is Artificer's Intuition. Discard an artifact card from your hand, search your library for an artifact card with converted mana cost X or less, reveal that card and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. As already mentioned, we are reanimating artifacts, so discarding cards isn't really a big problem. And most of the key components for most of our combos are artifacts with a CMC cost of 0. So Artificer's Intuition basically finds everything for you. I wish you good luck with your deck construction for this Azorius commander. If you wanna take a look, card by card, how this have been put together, there's a link in the description below of this video to a Moxfield decklist built by Naystrom. In any case guys, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys in the next one.